All right, thanks, Ben. Appreciate that. So let's rock and roll here. Um, I was up till 1 a.m. last night putting this together for you guys. So I'm really excited to show this. Am I full screen at the moment, you guys?
Yeah, you're good to go.
Okay. All right. So first off, I want to thank Implant Concierge, Brett Royal, and the team. When we started this journey with InstaRisa, we were just doing a workflow with free-handed, but then we started to recognize that half the room were still using surgical guides. And, the more I dove into it, I realized, hey, you know what, there's a big market for surgical guides. And so at that point, we actually researched and talked to multiple implant surgical guide companies, and we landed on Brett Royal and Implant Concierge. And I was very fortunate to meet with them and get to see their excitement and some of the unique features of their guides versus other companies, which I'm going to be sharing throughout this presentation. So bottom line is, if you are wanting to use a surgical guide, then you can implement the surgical guide system, specifically the one that we helped design with Implant Concierge, into the digital workflow. So just to summarize, what we're going to be talking about today. Can you see my slides? Yeah, I can't. That's weird. It's not transferring on mine.
We see them, Mark.
Okay. Okay. So here we go. For those of you guys that don't know me, my name is Art Morales, and I'm a full-time practicing dentist here in Clovis, California. I have an implant practice. We focus on implants, anything from single to full mouth reconstruction is the focus. So everything that we're going to reveal are things that we're doing on a daily basis in my practice. First and foremost, though, I'm a Christian. I love Jesus Christ, and mainly due to the fact that he's blessed me with this amazing family. I have 4 daughters, and it's been a joy to raise 4 daughters. Everybody says, what's it like having 4 daughters? Do you miss out on sports? And the answer is no. My daughters are all amazing athletes, and so I still get that fix. But nonetheless, what I'm going to show you today is the InstaRisa workflow combined with Implant Concierge surgical guides. What are some of the unique features of it, and how this can really deliver predictable results surgically and prosthetically. And a lot of what you're going to see is based off of Kois principles. John Kois is a mentor of mine. I love that guy. I'm a clinical instructor at the Kois Center, and essentially what Fernando and I were able to do is convert a lot of the analog systems and fundamentals into a digital workflow utilizing the face. So let's jump into this. So why surgical guides? I will tell you kind of my journey when it came to surgical guides. I first got my training with Carl Misch, and we started training doing singles, free-handed. And then I started to venture into surgical guides. And at that point, I think it's very essential. I want to make this very clear. I'm a big believer that we should not just rely on surgical guides alone. We have to be able to know and understand how to freehand, because there is going to be times where the surgical guide is not going to be helpful. For example, if you extract a tooth and the whole buccal plate is missing, what do you do, right? And so, but my journey with going from freehand to surgical guides, then back to freehand. And now, believe it or not, I'm doing surgical guides, whether it's robotic assisted or static guides like this, specifically on cases that I feel like it's very, very important to nail the placement. So I'm going to show you a case today from start to finish and every little step. So it's going to be a good refresher for those of you guys that are doing InstaRisa. And for those of you that are not doing InstaRisa, you're going to have a very clear idea of why InstaRisa combined with Implant Concierge surgical guides is definitely a path to more predictable results. So The nice thing about Implant Concierge is that they have various types of guides, whether it's tooth-borne or bone-borne or, and everything in between. And I like the fact that it's diverse. One of the things I've learned with Implant Concierge was pretty obvious in the forefront. The first guide I used with them, it just snapped right in. I mean, I literally zero adjustments, these guides that I'm doing. And for those of you guys that struggle with guides, you know what I'm talking about. I've never had to adjust a guide from Implant Concierge. And I learned that the technology that they're using is fairly unique. They use the Stratus printer, and it has the strongest resin on the market for surgical guides, but yet it's very, very precise. And so I really like that. But let me jump into this. And this is a slide that I built because, everybody asks, like, what is InstaRisa about? Is it just about a facial scanner? And I want to be very clear, that's not what it's about. InstaRisa is a digital workflow that is from A to Z. Specifically, this webinar is going to be about all-on-X protocols. But this workflow is utilized for any type of restoration that's in the aesthetic zone, whether it's a crown and bridge case, a veneer case, a denture case, an overdenture case. But specifically when we're talking about all-on-X, I soon realized that through the struggles and problems that I was experiencing with all-on-X, that I felt like this was a three-headed monster. And so what is the three-headed monster I'm referring to when it comes to all-on-X? I'm going to show you, and I firmly believe that InstaRisa is the only workflow out there that has addressed this three-headed monster that we're up against in a workflow, right? If you're following the InstaRisa workflow, you're going to be able to overcome and beat up this three-headed monster. So what is a three-headed monster when it comes to all-on-X? First and foremost, it's passive fit, right? Passive fit is essential. If you don't have a passive fit, then your restorations are going to be compromised. So nowadays, most people think that passive fit is quote unquote a digital workflow. And the reason that's the case is because when photogrammetry came about, everybody thought that that was the cure and the fix to all the problems that we were having. Well, it's only one part of this puzzle. Now we have the ability to get a passive fit with, of course, photogrammetry, which I believe is phenomenal technology. Photogrammetry now also comes in intraoral scanning systems, but the most popular is the extraoral scanning system. And they work great. They're very easy to use. But what Fernando and I discovered 8 years ago is that there's other methods that utilize the intraoral scan and to capture implant position to get a passive fit. And 8 years ago, literally, even still to today, to be honest with you, people say that what we're doing is not possible to get a passive fit predictably with an intraoral scanner. So here's the point. Regardless of what technology you're using, photogrammetry or intraoral scanning technology, you have to have a passive fitting restoration for the case to be successful. The second monster is aesthetics, right? The aesthetics is crucial because you have to remember that patients are not coming to us for implants. They're coming to us for a beautiful smile. And you can have a passive fitting restoration, but if the midline is off, if the buccal corridor is too small or too big, if the face smile, the occlusal plane is canted, it's not a success. So making sure that the aesthetics is spot on from day one is essential. And of course, this is the biggest issue. This is what we get calls about is, hey doc, you know what, Art, like I get a passive fit, yeah, sometimes my aesthetics is not so bad, but the bite is just killing me. I'm having to do multiple try-ins over and over and over again. And that's a practice killer, right? I have estimated that every time that I do a try-in or I have to remake it, it's costing me $1,500 to $2,000. And that's just based off of chair time. So how do we minimize the amount of try-ins? And I'm going to show you with our workflow. So InstaRisa addresses every one of these issues that we all experience with All-on-X restorations. So how do we do it? So this concept is essential. We have to really look at patients and treat them from the outside in, not the way that we've been doing it for years from the inside out. So the point is that lots of times we just place the implants and then we design the restoration and then we take a step back and we look to see what the patient looks like. Well, that's kind of backwards, right? Because a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of money has been invested by the time you get to the point of trying it in. So what is key is if we work from the outside in, it's essential to start with the face, evaluate the face, then look at the lips in different lip positions. Once you evaluate the face and the lips, then you can start determining where the teeth belong in the face. Once you decide where the teeth belong, then we can design the pink portion specifically for the All-on-X restoration. Or if you decide you're not going to do a FP3, are we going to use the natural gums? Then once that's essentially designed, then we determine where the titanium goes. And that's where it's essential, if you're using a surgical guide, that you design the smile first using the face, and then we determine where the implants go in relationship to that design. So for those of you guys that are not very familiar with InstaRisa, here's the high-level view of what we do. We scan the face with our facial scanner. We scan the teeth with the intraoral scanner, and we create a virtual patient. This is all done prior to treating the patient. Once we have the patient in front of the designer, now the designer has the ability to design the perfect smile. The nice thing about this technology is that we're able to create a virtual patient with accuracy. You know, many people say that, hey, why can't I just use my iPhone, you know, and use some of these apps? Or why can't I use some of these other systems? Well, you could. I'm not saying you can't. But if you're looking for predictability, it's essential that you have a facial scanner that scans accurately. So the facial scanner that we utilize is the InstaRisa scanner. It scans at 40 microns. You scan the teeth at approximately 40 microns or less. You're able to align the two data sets to create a virtual patient, and then you design the smile. So all this is done on the front end. Now, once the smile is done, then you can show it to the patient if you choose, make sure that they're happy. You could show their smile in different lip positions. You have so much data here, so much anatomical geometry of the face to determine if a case like this, who we were able to take a class 3 patient and open the vertical and design the restoration at the open vertical and deliver it. So with our workflow, we're always capturing the bite prior to seeing the patient and designing the restoration accordingly. So once the patient okays it, such as a difficult case like this, then we're able to provide predictable results. So this is the patient that I just presented in the video. And literally, these are the teeth that she got on the day of surgery. We actually did this case at a live surgery course. This is 3 weeks post-op. But these are the same teeth that she was able to wear until the implants integrated, and then we replaced them with the final restoration. So imagine, you know, being able to get predictable results like this time and time and time again. So the prosthetic part is where people are challenged. Now, here's the beautiful thing. With surgical guides, we can really, really minimize the risk. We can really minimize the guesswork on the front end. Because if you can imagine, the smile is designed, and once the smile is designed, the implant guide is created from that smile design. So I started this group probably a couple years ago. It's called the InstaRisa Tribe. And for those of you guys who are not part of it, I want to encourage you guys to join. It's free, so just scan that QR code. But we have over 800 people, I think, on this tribe, and everybody there is in the implant field, specifically interested in growing their practice, providing better care, and sharing their knowledge. And so I want to encourage those that are not part of the group to join, because I firmly believe in this quote that none of us are smarter than all of us, and together we can help build a community and an amazing profession, which we all know dentistry is the best profession in the world. So when it comes to the InstaRisa workflow, this is what it is. Phase 0, we call phase 0 intake records. So at this point, you're going to scan the patient's face in different lip positions. You're going to scan the bite with the facial scanner, with the intraoral scanner. Yes, the facial scanner is a bite scanner. That's one of the unique features that you're able to leverage when you have a accuracy of 40 microns. You'll take an intraoral scan of the upper arch, the lower arch, and you'll get a CBCT. And from this data, we are going to align all this data with accuracy and create a virtual patient. From that virtual patient, we're going to design the smile. And then at this point, if you're using surgical guides, you will submit your case via the portal, and Brett's going to talk about this in greater detail later. But from that smile design, we're going to be able to create a surgical guide. And I say we, Implant Concierge, will create a surgical guide from that smile design that was facially generated. And then it's time for surgery. So phase 1 is surgical day records. So you're going to use a fiducial. We're going to show you the fiducial that we highly recommend. And on the day of surgery, you're going to get an implant position using photogrammetry or the ScanDAR technique, or any other system that's out there. It doesn't really matter to us how you capture implant position, but when it comes to the soft tissue, we're going to show you how to get a soft tissue scan predictably on the day of surgery. We're going to align that data all the way back to the smile design. And then that information is going to be sent via the cloud to your 3D printer, and you can print and deliver same day or next day, whatever you choose. And then once the implants integrate, of course, we're going to get new records, and then we're going to be able to predictably either go straight to final or get a prototype. And then we'll deliver the final restoration. So literally with the InstaRisa protocol, it's very standard to go from start, which is intake records, to the final restoration in as little as 4 to 5 appointments. So let me introduce you to Maria. Okay, so I'm going to take a really deep dive into this case because I think it's essential to understand all the little steps that really create a predictable workflow. So this is all COIS-based risk assessment. It's essential. Every single patient that walks in my office gets a risk assessment. And John Coyce calls this the 4 food groups. Periodontal, we look at the gums. Essentially, you just ask yourself, does this patient have bone? If they don't have bone, then it's a high-risk patient at hello. If they do have a lot of bone, then it's low risk. So you can also refer to it as red dot versus green dot. So then we look at the teeth, biomechanics. Are the teeth weak? Are they strong? Do they have root canals? Are they fractured? Is there decay? So Maria is at high risk. So she has a lot of teeth problems. Then we look at function, right? This is the TMJ. This is the chewing system, the TMJ, the muscles of mastication, the occlusion. What is her risk at hello? So she was at moderate risk. In this case, she had occlusal dysfunction. You're going to see what I mean by that. And then the 4th food group is dental facial. Really, this comes down to aesthetics and lip dynamics, specifically how much gum is shown on the upper arch versus how much gums are shown on the lower arch. So for Maria, she's at moderate risk, yellow dot on the upper arch when she smiles in Duchenne, and she's at low risk on the lower arch. So we went through treatment options, and what we settled on is we were going to do an upper arch all on X, and we're going to do a couple of implants on the lower arch. We're going to save her lower teeth, and we were going to use surgical guides for the upper arch. So phase 0 intake tech records. Let me introduce you to Maria. So here's Maria. In fact, some of you guys may recognize Maria because she was a case that we did at our live surgical course, I think back in September. So this is the series of photos that we take on every single new patient. There's a lot more than what I'm going to reveal today, but we take a full face in repose. So we ask the patient to say Emma, and when those lips are at rest, we snap that photo. We have the patient give us a natural smile, and then a huge smile, which we refer to as Duchenne smile. And then here's the one that many people miss. This is the shh smile. So the smile is key. It's essential if you are doing a lower all-on-X restoration. Why is it essential? Why is it important? It's because if you do not understand how much bone reduction to do on the lower arch, it's going to be impossible to determine how much bone reduction that's necessary to hide the transition line. If you go shh, it's the only sound in the human language that allows the lip to drop to its most pronounced amount so you can determine how much bone reduction is necessary. Okay, so here you go. Here's some close-ups of Maria. Here are some intraoral photos. So right away, you have to ask yourself this question. This is an exercise that I do with every patient at every consultation, regardless of whether the patient is going to be moving forward to treatment or not. It's just a mental exercise that I do. I ask myself this question. If I'm going to treat this patient, am I going to open the vertical or am I going to leave this patient at MIP? I think it's pretty clear on this patient. The vertical has been diminished. The anterior teeth are starting to flare out because she doesn't have any posterior stops. And so in this case, we're going to open the vertical. Okay, so here we go. Here's her upper arch, lower arch. The plan is again to save her lower teeth. She wanted me to take them all out. And after I evaluated them, there wasn't much decay on the lower anterior teeth numbers, but there was some perio disease that I felt we can really help her with. So here she is, lateral view. Of course, we get our pink shade guides. So here's the records that are essential. You're going to take an upper intraoral scan and a lower intraoral scan. Try to capture as much data as possible. And we're going to get a bite scan. So let me take some time to explain this. When we take a bite scan, lots of times we trust the technology too much. We think that because we scan the bite with the intraoral scan, as shown on the left side, that the bite is accurate. But if you understand how intraoral scanning technology works, you'll soon understand the fact that the field of view of an intraoral scanner is very small. And if you are not able to scan the upper arch and the lower arch with data, then the computer system is going to put the teeth together, the arches together, but it's guessing, okay? It's complete guesswork. And although you look at it on the computer and it looks fine, there's no way of knowing or understanding if it's accurate or not, okay? So don't trust intraoral scan bites when there's a lot of missing teeth in the posterior, as there is on Maria. So there's no teeth on the lower arch and the posterior. And so I'm not going to trust that bite, especially if I'm opening the vertical. You can see this is not an MIP bite. We took an open bite record. How do we get an open bite record? On this particular case, I believe we used a leaf gauge. The better way of doing it is if you're going to open the vertical and you're missing posterior teeth, Fernando and I came up with this technique called the InstaRisa putty bite. And we've all used putty maybe in the past in the analog world, but what Fernando and I did is took it to the next level. This is putty. It's just Benco blue putty. And we use a leaf gauge in this case. We open the vertical, we put the putty in, and we have the patient bite down. And then what we'll do is we'll let that set. And then once it sets, we're going to have the patient open, and we're going to inject light body wash onto the upper arch and onto the lower arch. We'll do one at a time, let it set. And what this does is it allows us to capture a very, very precise mold of the rugae, of the teeth, of the cingulums. There's much, much better data that we're able to utilize when we scan this putty bite 360 degrees, as shown on the right. We scan that 360 degrees. And then what we're going to do is we're going to align the intraoral scan of the upper arch to the top of that putty bite and the intraoral scan of the lower arch to the bottom of that putty bite. And you can see how we're going to be able to capture the vertical very precisely. We have found that if you use this particular contrast spray, you're going to get a much better scan of that putty bite. All right, so we got the bite. We got the bite record. This is very important. When you're scanning the face with the facial scanner, it's essential that you leave the bite record in place. So you can see on the far right, we take a bite record with the InstaRisa retractors. These are retractors that Fernando has designed to be able to retract the lips and the cheek on the inside and the outside, the buccal mucosa, significantly so you can get better scans. So you're going to take a facial scan with the bite record in place. Then you're going to take all these other scans with the bite record in place. So these are just standard protocols. We take a repose smile, a natural smile, and a Duchenne smile. Why is it important that we take all these facial scans? It's essential because now we're going to allow the designer to design the ideal smile in different lip positions. And all of these facial scans are going to overlay to one another. So as a result, you're going to be able to virtualize the patient. Then at this point, what you're going to be able to do is take the CBCT. It is beneficial to take the CBCT with the bite record. It's not essential, but it's helpful. Once you have the records, that appointment, by the way, in my practice takes about 30 to 45 minutes, okay? And ideally, you take these records a week, 2 weeks before seeing the patient for treatment. That allows the laboratory, we have amazing designers, and you would submit these cases to the InstaRisa portal, and then we would be able to design the smile with the wax up. So this is the lab portion. This is what we do at InstaRisa. We align all of the data sets very accurately. And once the data set is aligned, then we're able to design the smile with confidence. Here's the key difference. When you have accurate records, you're able to align the intraoral scanning data to the facial scanning data, to the enhanced bite record that I just showed you, to the CBCT. So you have a true virtual patient. And when those records come on board to the portal, one of the things that we do is we're doing quality control of those records to make sure that everything aligns precisely. So I'm going to go more in depth in that. But imagine if you had the ability to truly virtualize the patient, to be able to align all these data sets and the CBCT, and you're able to design the perfect smile, and then from that perfect smile, be able to generate a surgical guide that's able to be used on the day of surgery with the final restoration in mind. So we're starting from the outside in, right? With the face, the lips, the teeth, the gums, and we're planning that titanium with the surgical guides last, okay? All right, day of surgery. This was at our course. So the first thing is we typically, this is an upper arch case. You're going to deliver a half a carpio of anesthetic. I like to tell people to deliver it right around first, second premolar area, a little bit off center if possible, because you have the suture in the middle of the palate. Because what we're doing is we're going to place the fiduciary marker there, okay? So what we were able to do is design these guides with Implant Concierge. So you can design these guides so that we know exactly where to place the fiduciary. You can see that there's a large area there where the amazing treatment designers, when it comes to implant placements at Implant Concierge, have evaluated the bone very thoroughly and have determined where is the best place to put our fiduciary. So what we'll do is we'll start with the lance drill, and we will go about 3 millimeters into the palate with the lance drill. And then this is our artificial reference screw. Our artificial reference screw is placed. It's a self-tapping screw. I'll show you a little bit more what that looks like here in a second. It's a self-tapping screw that goes in the palate, and it's indexed with a 4 millimeter square. And the reason it's indexed is because you can see on the right side, we have an artificial reference screw fiduciary. And that is our scan body. We call that the ARS scan body. And it goes in ideally you place the notch to the back of the throat. Here is the driver that we use to place the fiduciary. It's on a contra angle. We have a kit that has all these parts and pieces in it. Now, once that artificial reference screw scan body is in place, there's an embedded screw on the inside of the scan body. You're going to inject Scandar. It is a blue registration material that has a matte finish that hardens to about 90, shore hardness of 90. And essentially what we're doing is we're creating this Scandar trail. What is the purpose of the Scandar trail? The purpose of the Scandar trail is so that you can facilitate the stitching of the intraoral scan very easily, especially when you have a patient that has a really deep palate. If you don't have the Scandar trail, there are going to be times where after the data is processed in your intraoral scan, that fiduciary is going to be cut off of the final process scan because the AI in some of these systems sees that as an artifact. If you link it together with the teeth, as we did here, then it's going to trick the system to think it's part of the data that's required. So you make this Scandar trail, and at this point, you're going to scan this with your intraoral scanner, okay? Now, one thing that's really important to note, I only recommend that you anesthetize the area where you're placing the artificial reference screw. Why? Because we want to make sure that the rest of the data, such as the soft tissue, is in the same exact topography and shape and form as your pre-surgical record that you use to design the wax up. If I anesthetize the entire mouth and then I scan, then it's not going to align precisely. So here you can see we take the scan, and once we take the scan, we're going to capture that intraoral scan record. You can see here how high the Scandar is. Again, that's just for the Scandar trail, so you don't have to go deep into the palate. Okay, alignment is 100% essential. Some people refer to this as breadcrumbs, okay? So let me take you through this process, because if you can grasp this, if you're new to digital dentistry, this is essential to really make workflows predictable. And Fernando realized this 8 years ago when we started doing these cases, that we had to have a common reference in each scan in order to align the two data sets precisely and accurately. So here's an example. We take the intake intraoral scan of Maria's upper arch, and then we create a pre-design. Okay, all this is done. This is a pre-surgical wax up that's designed with the face. Okay, so essentially the designer just designs the restoration on top of that intake intraoral scan. Then the patient approves the smile. Then at this point, we go to surgery. On the day of surgery, we're going to place our fiduciary, and we're going to capture this pre-surgical ARSS record. ARSS record stands for Artificial Reference Screw Scan Body Record. This is the one I just showed you on how to do. You're scanning this, and then next step is you're going to anesthetize the entire mouth, and then we're going to reflect, and we're going to start our process with our surgical guides. So this is the Implant Concierge guide that I feel is really, really different than most. One of the key features is that, I mentioned this earlier, is that they use a Stratus printer. The nice thing about Stratus is they have the strongest resin when it comes to surgical guides on the market. And when you have the strongest resin, some of the things that you're able to do is you're able to get a very low profile. So you can see that top, it's referred to as the bone reduction guide, that opaque looking one. So the bone reduction guide can be made at a very, very low profile. So you don't have to make this huge, ginormous flap, okay? And it's still going to maintain the durability and the strength, so you're not going to have to worry about it cracking or breaking. This is a way to get around having to do expensive metal bone foundation guides, okay? So the other thing is that you'll notice the dovetail. So the dovetail is where the delivery guide, which is the clear one that has the number 1 on it, the delivery guide is going to sit into the dovetails of the bone foundation guide. Okay. The other cool thing about Implant Concierge guides is that everything is numbered. So you can see that the first thing you're going to do is you're going to try in the delivery guide. It says number 1. And then number 2, you're going to place the bone foundation guide. Okay. And you're going to confirm that these fit precisely. If they fit precisely, then at this point, you're going to be able to go to the next step, which is fixating the bone foundation guide to the bone. All right. So this is something that I highly recommend. I have helped design other guided systems on the market. And one of the things that I came to understand is that pins don't work as good as screws when it comes to fixating the bone foundation guide. So here you can see we were able to use, in this case, were striker screws to screw the bone foundation guide into the bone. It's important because if you're using pins, there's always a risk of that thing moving during surgery. And if it moves, then guess what? Your implant placement is not going to be as precise as it should be. So you have the option of using pins and screws. I highly recommend that you use screws. Okay. So at this point, I screwed it in, and now we're going to extract the teeth. And I'm a big proponent for autogenous bone. So I use rongers. I get rongers and I clip all the major bone off. And I'm utilizing that bone foundation guide as my reference as to how much bone reduction is necessary. By the way, the amount of bone reduction that's necessary is very, very nice feature with the InstaRisa workflow because we're scanning the patient in different lip positions, specifically Duchenne smile. Then Implant Concierge knows exactly how much bone reduction is required based off of the amount, based off of the size of the smile. It's not just some generic formula, right? 12 millimeters of bone reduction, 13. That's not how it works. By the way, we've always said 16 millimeters of space is what we need. That was based off of hybrids that Palomalo found to be durable. Because in the past, it was based off of the strength of that was necessary for the materials that were used in the past, which was a titanium bar, acrylic, and denture teeth. So today we have materials that are much stronger. You don't need 16 millimeters of restorative space. So with our InstaRisa workflow, Implant Concierge is able to determine exactly how much bone reduction is necessary based off of the smile line and where that transition line needs to go. So nonetheless, you clip off the bone, you save the bone, you crush the bone, you're going to be able to recycle that bone on the same patient, of course. And then what I'll do is I'll just get a bone reduction burr and then just smooth it down. Okay. So here's another cool feature. You can see here it says number 3. So after the bone reduction's done, you're going to be placing this multi-purpose guide. So what it does is it clips into the dovetails right there. You can see the dovetails. And you're able to confirm if you've done adequate amount of bone reduction. Also, it also provides the timing for the multi-unit abutments. If you're using angled multi-unit abutments, they will label it for you so you know exactly where the angle should be placed in relationship to the implant. So this multi-purpose guide is used for step 3, and then once the MUAs go in, step 5, okay? So I confirm that it sits completely, and then at this point, here's the bone reduction that's completed. Everything is nicely reflected. By the way, I highly recommend that you do a palatal tie. It takes you an extra minute to just tie that palatal tissue back. So you're not fighting it. You're not battling it, the entire case. Just tie it back. The other thing I highly recommend, you can see the Optragate. We use an Optragate with an O-ringer throughout the surgery. That keeps everything fully retracted. This O-ringer is, this Optragate is not just used to take photos. It's in there the entire time. So it's a game changer when it comes to doing these types of cases. So then the next one is the osteotomy guide, which is number 4. So this clips into the bone foundation guide. And at this point, we're able to place the implants very precisely with any system that you're utilizing currently. Whatever implant guide system that you have, Implant Concierge will customize the guides to fit your drive system that you're using for your implant system. So once the implants are placed, you can see here we got a nice spread. The implants are placed. We place our multi-unit abutments. And then the next step is we put on the FP3 healing abutments. And these are InstaRisa components. The FP3 healing abutment goes onto the multi-unit abutment. And then at this point, we have been able to determine exactly where the MUA is based off of our DME library. So on the right side, you see there's the drawing of the FP3 healing abutment that we've designed a library with. And so many people are trying to understand how we align our cases so precisely. It's really in the genius that Fernando designed with having all of our components stacked from one part to the other, very precisely in the digital world and very precisely in the real world. So here you go. The FP3 healing abutments are placed onto the multi-unit abutments. And then we graft. This is important. You place the FP3 healing abutments and then you graft. Don't do the opposite. Don't graft and then put the FP3 healing abutments, because if a particle gets stuck in between the healing abutment and the multi-unit abutment, you're going to have a misfit. Okay, ask me how I know. So implants are placed. You can see the beautiful placement. That was not me. It was the implant surgical guide that was designed by Implant Concierge. So we were able to engage cortical bone on every single implant. We're able to get torque values of above 60 Newton centimeters very, very predictably. So I walk away from this case surgically with confidence, knowing that we're able to load this case immediately. So thank you, Implant Concierge, for making me look good right there. So nonetheless, what's the next step? Here's where we're going to utilize our scan body components that we've designed. Notice that it's a stackable system. It's the only stackable scan body on the market. This was an idea that I came about because I wanted to really expedite the process. As you know, when you're doing these cases, I got sick and tired of putting a scan body on, scanning, putting a healing abutment on, scanning, taking it on, and all this on and off, right? It takes a lot of time. So I told Fernando, hey, why don't we just design our healing abutment to be able to support our scan body? So this is the short scan body that's seated on top of the FP3 healing abutment. And then we have these blue skirts that we slide over. And what the blue skirt does is it allows us to prevent any of the blood to seep onto the scan body. So you can see that we can, almost scan this with ease without the worry of scanning blood or scanning saliva. Everything's pushed out of the way. And as long as you scan the top portion of the scan body, you're good. Okay. So this is the technique that we've been utilizing for 8 years. By the way, I don't own photogrammetry. I have never purchased extraoral photogrammetry. And the reason is that we all know that it works, but I've been using this technique for 8 years, done thousands and thousands. InstaRisa has about over 8,000 restorations utilizing this technique. We started using this technique 8 years ago with a Trios 3, and we still use the Trios 3. I also have the Trios 5. But why does this technique work? The reason this technique works is because if you look at the literature is absolutely correct when it says that you cannot use an intraoral scanner to accurately scan a full arch. I agree with that data 100%. But if you look at the data closely and the study, if you're trying to scan on the day of surgery, trying to scan hamburger in between each scan body is almost impossible with an intraoral scanner. But if you connect each scan body with a material that has a matte finish that has very harsh shore hardness and is very stable that creates topography, you're going to be able to stitch this very precisely. So let me show you. These scans take less than a minute, less than 60 to 90 seconds. When you have topography in between every scan body, we're able to stitch the photos very, very precisely. I am doing FP1s, right? I'm doing FP2s, and of course FP3s with this type of technology. It works very routinely. It doesn't get stuck, right? It doesn't skip a beat. You're able to scan very accurately and deliver passive fitting restorations with an intraoral scanner. And it's funny, you know, Fernando and I, we literally had people mock us and laugh at us and tell us that this was not possible. And still 8 years later, we're doing it. And now you're starting to see others that are promoting the use of an intraoral scanner with their scan bodies, okay? So this technique is relies on the scanner, meaning which technology you're using, and the scanner, who is scanning, right? The person that's scanning, and the scan path. So the scan path is essential. You may have noticed the scan path. We went from one tuberosity to the other, you can see here. And then we come back on each scan body and spend approximately 2 seconds to capture that scan body before we move on to the next scan body. If you follow this technique, you're able to capture very, very precise and accurate scans. And then the other nice thing is that we're scanning the artificial reference screw and the pellet simultaneously. So you're able to capture the implant position and the fiducial marker in one scan, which is really unique compared to some other systems such as photogrammetry, where you have to take 2 different scans, one for the implant position and the other for the healing abutments. And then you have to align those 2 data sets. Here, we're using the fiducial and scanning it simultaneously with our implant position. But let me make this clear. If you have photogrammetry, I encourage you to keep using it, okay? Keep using the photogrammetry to capture implant position. But you're still going to have problems unless you have a fiduciary that you can consistently and predictably scan on the day of surgery to get an accurate bite and an accurate aesthetics. So even those photogrammetry users, we embrace them, use that technology. But if you want to take your workflow to the next level and nail aesthetics and nail occlusion, then I'm going to highly encourage you to invest the time and energy and money to understand this workflow and utilize this workflow for those other 2 components. Okay, so I had this.
Hey, Art, sorry. Just time wise, we're over the 6 o'clock p.m. PST mark. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, brother. I'm going to be jamming here. Okay, so at this point, this question comes up all the time. How do I scan on the day of surgery? Okay, so scanning on the day of surgery is challenging. So we have a couple of ways of doing it. Number one, if you use our healing abutments, they are of a matte finish, so you're able to scan them easily if you can stitch it. But if you can't stitch it, then we suggest on the day of surgery to take a putty scan, a putty impression. You take a putty impression, and then from that putty impression, you're now going to scan the putty, because this is going to give you your soft tissue position. Okay, we already have our implant position. Now you're getting the soft tissue position. And then you scan that and invert it. So now you have the soft tissue. So here we go. Here's our stackable system again. We got the pre-surgical record, as I mentioned earlier. Then the pre-surgical record is aligned to the pre-designed wax up that was designed with the face via the artificial reference screw in the middle. Then we capture our implant position and we align that to the artificial reference screw. And then we're going to take our soft tissue putty and we're going to align the soft tissue putty to the implant position via the stackable digital library of our healing abutment that's connected to the scan body. So you can see that the workflow is of complete accuracy. So if I got the bite record right on the front end and I designed the wax up with the face, I'm going to have predictable results. So here's the InstaRisa design, okay? And what we're able to do is make this design reality. So we're able to deliver, oops, I'm sorry, this went really fast. So this was delivered in front of the course attendees. You can see that everything is spot on. And here's the before. We delivered this case next day. And then there's the 3-week post-op, okay? And all this was able to be achieved because we had a predictable surgical protocol of using implant guides. We had a predictable prosthetic workflow that was based off of the InstaRisa 3D facially generated design. So once these implants integrate, InstaRisa takes it to the next level, and we're able to design a final restoration. This is the final restoration that was delivered. You got to get the bite right, right? This is Sid Parker saying. He's like, you don't get the bite right, none of this matters. So you can see here, we just dropped it in, literally did not adjust a thing. Here's the final restoration that was delivered. I want to give special props and thanks to Marlon and Nayar. They are my in-house designers and finishers, just phenomenal work that they do. They just make me look so good, so thank you. But here's the final restoration that's delivered, and we just dropped in a couple of implants on the lower arch to really help stabilize her bite. But isn't this why we do what we do, right? I mean, that smile says it all. What we design is what we get. And the proof is in the pudding, right? Here's the before, here's the design, and here's the after. What you design is what you get when you have a predictable workflow. All right, well, I want to encourage you all to sign up, scan this QR code. This is the InstaRisa Tribe. I truly believe that the Tribe is one of the best groups out there because we're all sharing our struggles, we're all sharing our wins, we're all sharing the good, bad, and the ugly of dentistry to help uplift our profession. So I'd like to finish it off by saying if we would all achieve more if we were able to chase our dreams instead of focusing in on our competition. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time. I know I went a little bit over, but I hope that this was worth your while. And if you're still with me, Ben.
Yeah, so
actually, I want to introduce Brett, right?
Yeah, sorry. Brett Royal from Implant Concierge on the call. Brett, if you want to introduce yourself real quick, maybe we, and then after you talk, we can open it up for some Q&A. You're on mute, Brett.
Sorry about that. Dr. Mireles, you said that we made the implants go in, but we appreciate everything you do. I mean, your technology, what you and the team, the Tribe have built is just truly amazing. And it's a pleasure to work with you guys because we know that when we get the information back from you guys, our guides work better because we have the great, amazing diagnostic data to work with, and it makes a huge difference in what we can provide as well. So the combination is super powerful, and that's really what we wanted to expand upon for the doctors who want to use InstaRisa, but also want to use guided surgery. How do you do that? So I'm going to give a very, very short presentation, and really I'm just focusing on two things, and it's really as a dentist, if you want to use Implant Concierge and you want to utilize InstaRisa, how do you start a case? And then also, what's the process? So we're going to present that. This is something that myself and Dave with the InstaRisa Tribe that we've built out, especially for InstaRisa users. And so let me share my screen here and go from there. Ben, I got so excited to say thank you for the case, Dr. Mireles. I didn't really introduce myself. I'm Brett. I'm the founder of Implant Concierge and director of guided surgery here. And for us, it's all about our people and our passion for dentistry, and of course our portal and now our partnerships with Dr. Mireles and InstaRisa. So thank you so much. So thank you for allowing me to be here, and thanks for the partnership. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, you should be seeing my screen now. It says InstaRisa Certified Users Workflow. And once again, this is a workflow that we created just for InstaRisa. And the process in Dr. Mireles' presentation is he spent some critical slides talking about the records they take, the diagnostic data, the intake, at phase 0. And at that point, nothing's going to change for InstaRisa certified users. You guys will continue to do your same record taking process and continue to upload them directly to InstaRisa. At that point, InstaRisa will do their alignment of data and also create the 3D facially generated scan, smile like they always do. Now, where it gets a little different, this is where InstaRisa, due to this portal that we built out just for InstaRisa and for this partnership, InstaRisa can come in and they can create a new case, and they can, as you can see, they can add a dentist. So they will take the information that you've already sent to them, they'll create a case, they'll add you, the dentist, as a case partner to the case. So we're all working in one HIPAA compliant portal, sharing the data, sharing the notes, sharing everything that we have together in one location. They're going to create that case. At that point, once the case is created, they'll upload the information, and they'll also upload the wax up that they've created. Once we have that, Implant Concierge will go ahead and create the treatment plan, what we call the initial treatment plan. And of course, if you wanted a radiology interpretation, you can see here, we'll also post a radiology interpretation. We do have 5 radiologists on our team that are also part of the portal, and we get our turnaround time on those in less than a day for the most part. So it's really fast turnaround. It's not a rush fee. That's just our normal $85 fee. In addition, what I want to focus in on here in the middle of the screen, it says, Dr. Medialis to schedule the VIP session. And so what he'll do is he'll click on that red action item button. When he clicks on it, the portal is all integrated with our scheduling tool. So you can see the list of names at the top. You choose your date, you choose your favorite 3D case coordinator, and you choose what time works for you on which day. At that point, you can either choose first available, or you choose the ideal person, the ideal time that works for your schedule. You hit open, and it automatically schedules the meeting for you. So it's really smooth, really slick. Obviously, making phone calls and having a lot of text messaging, that's really hard to manage. So you can control the schedule. You can control who you work with. You click the button, it schedules a meeting. After that meeting takes place, Implant Concierge, as you saw earlier, we will design the surgical guide. Now, also what makes us unique is that we're going to give you the opportunity to choose if you want to print them in-house with your own printer, or if you want Implant Concierge to use our Stratasys printers, which are, commercial grade, large build plate. I can print 40 guides simultaneously. It takes about 10 hours, but they're extremely precise, every single guide. So it's a great technology, but you can either print it yourself or we'll print it for you. Once you receive it, down here on the bottom, obviously you go ahead and you place the implants, you follow the protocol that Dr. Medialis has already presented, and at that point, InstaRisa will finish creating your healing teeth, and you'll go on and finish the case for your provisionals. All right, the cool thing about this is because we've created this workflow for everybody is that no one wants multiple invoices as saying, well, where's the invoice going to come from? How much are you charging me? How much are you charging me? So we Implant Concierge made it so that way InstaRisa will just bill you directly with a single invoice. That way you have one invoice for the entire case, and it's all in one portal.